Hello. This week we are studying the Classical Conversation Cycle 1 Week 14 series, and we are doing an art project. We're going to do a small study on the goldsmith, sculptor, artist, and he dipped into some architectural work. His name is Ghiberti, and his first name was Lorenzo. He's known for being a very great goldsmith. He was born in 1378 and died in 1451. His birth date, there's quite a bit of debate about that because some people claim him that he was born in 1381, but the historical records say 1378. Anyway, he was around 77 years old when he passed on. And the reason I mention it is because probably over 50 years of his life was spent doing commissioned work for the baptistry in Florence, Italy. He was Italian, and he was said to have done beautiful works of gold, making molds out of gold, brass, and gilded, golded looks on things when he was quite young, and he was quite a master. He followed his father around, who was a goldsmith, and that's where he learned most of his technique and his secret work that people hadn't seen before or hadn't seen as expert as he did them. I'm going to give you a brief history about Lorenzo Ghiberti. So bear with me, and then we'll do a small art project for your children to follow. He was most famous for doing some work in the Florence baptistry of a church there. Michelangelo saw it years later and called it the Gates of Paradise. That's how beautiful this work by Ghiberti was. And I will explain the bronze work that he did. But to have such a compliment from Michelangelo saying that they look like the gates of paradise. You know, if you read in the scriptures, the pearly gates of heaven, and to have something that is so unspeakably beautiful, I think it did justice to call them the gates of paradise. They were just so beautiful. When Ghiberti was 23, he went to Rimini, Italy to get away from the plague. He knew he was a good artist, but he thought he would die. People were dying like crazy over this plague, so he found some good fortune there because he got to see castles and other artists and frescoes and all this beautiful Renaissance, early Renaissance art, and it really inspired him. And having the craft of being a goldsmith and a sculptor motivated him to learn more and be more. And then he got into stained glass art and started commiserating about the way things were done wrong or done right with other artists. And he sort of found his niche. So there was a company that, a factory, sort of to say, that made wool, and it was called the Wool Clothes Guild. And these people saw some of his work. He did samples, and they were just so impressed that they asked him to make a pair of bronze doors for the baptistry in Florence, Italy. And his first commission was in 1401. They had a contest, and they wanted these different artists to show them their work. And so he brought one panel, and there were 6 different well-known prominent artists who entered this contest. And the one that Ghiberti won with was a bronze work where he did Abraham from the Old Testament, where Abraham is bringing his son Isaac up to the mountain. And we all know how that story is. Needless to say, he won. And this is where he was asked to make the scenes from the Bible. Now imagine, to cast bronze and those tiny figures of Bible characters, you know, the animals and the people and the clouds and the heavens and the glory of heaven. And so he loved all that. But you know, to draw it is not so hard, but to cast it in bronze would be quite challenging because it's a thick substance. But he did it. There had already been one door at this baptistry, which was made in the early 14th century by an artist named Andrea Pisano. but that was only one door, and so there were other doors leading into this baptistry. Now you have to understand that during this time, the church was one of the main social functions and religious functions. It was a big deal during this time, and the baptistry was grandiose. They had beautiful works of art. They had stained glass, and they had some Gothic woodwork. So this was very impressive for Ghiberti to be honored enough to win a contest to make doors for this baptistry in Florence, Italy. So each door had 14 quatrefoils, which they kind of look like a flower. It's like a sort of like an arched flower, and then another arch, another one here, another one here, another one here. Kind of looks, if you kind of vaguely think of a little 4-leaf clover or 3-leaf clover, it would look like that. And they had them like with stained glass work, but it was bronze work. So he used a linear Gothic style to show depth. Now remember, you've got these doors, and there's 2 of them. One door has 14 panels, and the other door has 14 panels, and they're huge. I do not have the statistics of how many feet, but you can look on YouTube and you can see people standing next to these huge doors. One of the most wonderful things I learned while I was trying to research Ghiberti is that there is a reproduction of his doors in San Francisco. So you might want to look that up, or if you're visiting San Francisco, make sure you get to see these doors. Okay, so he won the contest, and he got to do the doors, and he framed these scenes from the Bible. Everything in this was the Bible or the Apostles or Jesus or Old Testament. Different doors had like Old Testament or New Testament. And let's see. So here he is doing the first door. The first door was done by Pisano, but this is Ghiberti's first door. So he's doing his first door, and he's really young. He's 23. And he said he's going to tell us how he started his work. First, he would just draw. He would draw, like, let's say he drew Moses, you know, and he drew his face, and he drew his, you know, what he looked like when he went up to get the 10 Commandment tablets. Okay, so then the second thing he would do was he would get some sort of waxy mold, and he would, let's pretend like this is a mold, and he would mold whatever his medium was. I think sometimes he would use wax most of the time. Then after he made his mold, he would engrave his pictures in there, and it kind of presses it, and it leaves an indentation, so you can kind of see it. And that's what he would do. So he would draw, then he would wax and engrave his mold. Then he used gold dust and mercury. I couldn't believe it because I think mercury is toxic, but this is what he did. And then after he heated off the mercury, he would gold leaf his work. So he made his mold, and it comes out convex after he made it. When he makes it, it's concave. He pours his wax in here, and then when after it dries or cooks or whatever, then it comes out this way when he pulls it out. Sort of like when you play with Play-Doh and you want to make a mold, and you come it out, take it out, and you get your mold of what you were trying to achieve. That's what he did. But to heat it off with mercury and gold dust, and then to gold leaf it, and then to shine it is just wonderful. And imagine the tiny, tiny little pictures. And what he did was, like if he, let's say he did, you know, Moses, like I said, getting the 10 Commandments, he would have like Moses here, but he wanted to show depth, and he didn't have a whole lot of room to do a whole, you know, Bible stories. So he'd put Moses here, and then maybe you'd see something else here that was a little bit smaller than Moses, and then it got smaller, and then it got smaller and smaller until it was just linear lines, and it would give a perception of it popping out at you. Another interesting fact is Ghiberti did a self-portrait, sort of say, a self-molding of his face in one of the panels in gold leaf. So that would be very beautiful to see if you ever visit Florence, Italy. They said that the doors went through a lot, you know, war and weather, and so they got refurbished, and they're gorgeous again. So they've survived many, many years. So to think he spent like 25 years just doing those first set of doors, the 14 panels on one side and the 14 panels on the other side, 28 panels, the doors open. So then he did so beautifully while making those that the people wanted more and more and more, because I guess they hadn't seen such exquisite goldsmith work. So he worked about 25 years making those first 28 panels, and he was finished with them, and almost 25 years later they were hung and finished. The people loved them so much they said, please make a second set of doors. Now the second set of doors only had 10 panels, so 10 here and 10 here, which makes it 20 when you put the doors together. He also made stained glass windows for a Florence cathedral, and he consulted with architects around the area on how to build the windows and the walls of cathedrals. He was most famous, as I said, for his doors, which were bronze doors. He was called the creator of the bronze doors, and like I said, Michelangelo said, oh, they were the gates of paradise. They're so beautiful. Now he did some of them with Jesus and the New Testament, and at the beginning he did John the Baptist and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So he kind of changed, you know, from Old Testament to New Testament. His artwork varied. And so to give you an idea, a very simple idea of how he did it, I had the children wrap some figures in aluminum foil. So what we did was we had some plastic buttons, and the kids sat there and they wrapped the buttons with foil, and then they glued little jewels onto, you know, to remember his stained glass work. And then we got a piece of cardboard, wrapped it in foil, and pressed the foil over the two square buttons. And then to make the children understand the depth, how it comes out convexly, they wrapped more buttons and glued them on top of the ones we hid underneath the original foil. So you get a Q-tip like this, and you can have the child outline the buttons that were the original covered ones. And after they outline it, it kind of pops out. Then you glue a newer one over the outlined, and it pops out even more. So they get to see how he would do his bronze, and he'd put a figure here, and then one would come further closer to you, and closer and closer. So just imagine when Ghiberti did this. I mean, casting a mold, and then shining it and carving it, and having to do such intricacy. You really need to go to YouTube and Google, let's see, The Gates of Paradise by Ghiberti, or you could put the creator of the bronze doors, however you want to look it up, and you will see the real ones in Florence, Italy. And they go very close with the camera so you can see the gold etching, the bronze, the casting, and the etching. I mean, I don't even know how many years just one panel took. The last one, The Gates of Paradise, were 20 panels. And they say it took him like 25 years just to do those 20. So imagine the work. But, you know, as a small child, this is the way I could get them to get the concept. And so they have the depth, and they have the concave and the convex. And so you would see like Moses here, and then another Moses, kind of people in the background, Isaac, and maybe the mount, and maybe the the tablets, the 10 Commandments. And so there's a lot going on. It's sort of like he was a painter with his bronze. He told his Bible stories with sculpting and casting and molding and bronze work. It was just such a fabulous and a difficult medium to make door panels that lasted hundreds and hundreds of years, and they're still there. So we're going to make one. I'll just show you how we easily made one. But the most important thing is to get your child to get the idea of the different layers and the different jobs and the different skills this man had. Thank you. So we'll begin our own project. So what I did was get a piece of wood and line it with some gold foil. You can use silver aluminum foil, whatever you have you can use. You could even use gift wrap and just tuck it tightly. So what I formed, I tried to get a Q-tip because your finger, your nail will rip the foil. So I had the children just softly outline the form. And so here we have a square. So we'll pretend this is one of the door panels. So then what we did was, we wrapped buttons, but I ran out of buttons, so I wrapped a sugar cube. Just wrap it in foil like this. You get a sugar cube and just wrap it, and be careful not to rip it. You want it, and then you tuck it under and you go like that. So now we've outlined this piece of wood, and I'll pretend I'm etching it with this. So these are just pieces of ribbon, and you can tell your child that that he etched this. Okay, so I'll get my hot glue. So you will just get a little hot glue and put on your ribbon, which will give it color. Okay, so I'm going to put this here, like that. We're really glitzing it up so you can see the beauty of it. But in reality, he probably would have sculpted this into his mold. Okay, so there's that. And there's that one. That. And it's really hard to stretch that thing. So there we have. Now it's looking like a panel. And then they were always a Bible story or the life of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So he told his stories with his door panels. So I'm going to use, this is what I keep my buttons in. So I'm going to show you how to make a little mold out of anything you think is pretty or anything that pops out. So I get a piece of foil and just make sure you start in the middle so you don't rip it. So you don't turn it back until you start in the middle. And you can see my shape coming. And this is where he etched, we're pretending he etched and sculpted. And then I'm going to just turn it under like that. And now he's got his mold, okay? Or you have your mold. So we'll get the Q-tip and make it nice and smooth. And I will hot glue this onto here. Okay, so we'll do that. We will hot glue our circle right there, like that. And this could be something beautiful in one of his door panels. And then, so we're going to pretend that we etched these pictures into our panel. These are great little cards I got at the Dollar Tree, and I mean, they're wonderful. On the back it tells the entire story of the person that the picture is showing. So you might want to get those. So I'm going to lay this here like that because he made it where there was a background and then the bronze popped out. So we're going to do it just like that to make it look like it's coming out. There's Moses and there's Saul and there's John the Baptist, Jesus' cousin. So imagine these done in bronze and then gilded and shiny and gorgeous and beautiful. So I'm going to get, that's done, and now I'm going to glue on the sugar cubes so we can put jewels around it. So here we are working on our door panel. Imagine these are all, they have been molded and etched in bronze, and now I'm going to put some jewels on. These are the sugar cubes that are wrapped. Actually, he had probably molded beautiful pieces of bronze. So I'm going to put this little jewel there, and then I'm going to put some more jewels, one on each sugar cube. So here is one of your door panels. It's not difficult, but it teaches the child the concept and the amount of precision of making the panel. So I hope it'll give them a taste of what Geberti did. And we'll put it over here next to, this is the one my little grandson made, and I think he quite enjoyed making it. And here we go. So anytime you think of Lorenzo Ghiberti, you'll appreciate the work he did.